Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has hidden unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure, or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
One time when we went door-to-door witnessing in New Orleans, when we identified ourselves as being from a local Baptist church, the man at the door immediately said, "Oh, you're the ones who believe women are inferior to men." I know I should not have been shocked, but I was. That's how the unchurched world saw us, because that's what was all over the news back then. We then had the opportunity to share with him God's plan for relationships. It's not just women submitting to their husbands, which, by the way, doesn't in the least make women inferior. It's all Christians first submitting themselves to the Lord and then to each other, as God has put authorities in our lives. In fact, in 2 separate letters, Paul discusses several relationships and how we should submit to one another. In both Colossians and Ephesians, he deals with husbands and wives, children and parents, servants and masters. Each person has an authority over them, but they're all under God's authority. In Ephesians, he talks about wise living. Among the list of ways to live wisely, Paul includes submission. Since we're all under authority, we can choose to be foolish and chafe under that authority, or we can submit to it. Knowing his readers and our listeners today want to live wisely, he described what submission looks like in different relationships. Wives are to submit to their husbands and respect them. In return, husbands are to love their wives as Christ loved the church, and as they love and care for their own bodies. If you ask me, husbands have the more difficult job, because if they do it right, submitting to Christ by loving and caring for their wives, they shouldn't be too difficult to submit to. I've found that to be true in my own marriage. When I know my husband loves me and has my interests at heart, he's easy to submit to. Now, when he's being selfish, I find my job much harder, though that doesn't happen too often. I know other marriages are much more difficult because either the husband doesn't love his wife with that sacrificial love of Christ, or the wife insists on being boss of the relationship, or both. But when our marriage relationship is based on mutual submission and love, it works the way it was intended, and a couple can get a lot more done in God's kingdom. Of course, Paul continues by telling children to submit in obedience to their parents, fathers to treat their children with respect as they discipline and teach them, slaves or workers to obey their masters as they obey Christ, and masters to be just and fair with their servants. But all of it starts with Ephesians 5:21, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. God doesn't force us to submit to Him, and He doesn't force us to submit in these relationships, but He tells us that if we love and fear Him, we will do that voluntarily. What authority has God put over you? Is it easy for you to submit to that authority?
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to share a treasure God has given you by doing an episode, please contact us. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you'll find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.